Pagkanaw do o ka ng ako na lang ka ng shop na ka ng naikuan. Okay.
10 seconds remaining.
Ano pa di ko arkana ni kuan de? Roger?
Nagpitik yung sniper eh.
Wait. Una na lang eh.
Ha?
Una na lang kami.
Binigyan mo ba mag-spike mid? Hunt the gun. Hunt the gun.
If a plant is too young and forced to bear fruit, most of its energy will be used to grow those first berries.
Hindi naman valid. Hindi naman valid, man.
And the plant can quickly become
Friend?
therefore the first. I found this camera buried a foot deep in the river mud. It said waterproof, but this thing was completely flooded. It must have been down there for like a year to be this waterlogged. But then I found the SD card. It was literally falling apart, but it could still be holding on to somebody's precious memories. So I rushed home, cleaned it up, plugged it in. Come on! Crickets. So I reached out to the biggest data recording expert Joe agreed to try in hopes of helping me surprise the owner. But his recording of the SD card surgery blew my mind. This is a visual representation of how the pictures actually look in binary. Eventually, Joe recovered over 100 files. We started searching for any evidence of the owner, but all we were seeing was random landscape shots that nobody's missing. But suddenly, that all changed. Oh, we got faces! Is this the owners? Then a story began to unfold. An entire bachelorette trip was on this card. Then we made a shocking discovery. 2011! These photos were lost underwater for 15 years.
What the
But
fudge,
then I
Dugay?
thought, a lot can change in 15 years. What if these people are mortal enemies now? One way to find out. So I posted a few of the photos on Facebook, and within 1 hour, someone tags the owner.
Oh my gosh, I remember the very moment it happened.
You really?
My float slipped. So I flipped it back over and then I screamed, "Brent, my camera!" And she goes, "Brent, get my camera!"
But here's the craziest part. After 15 years, the owners are still married and the girls are still friends.
We actually went on a 2-week vacation together last year. So
You're all still friends. Their photos had earned some money on Facebook, so I tossed that in the bag, and after 15 years, they were finally reunited with their camera and some cherished memories. I feel very lucky because I never would have met these people. I found this camera buried a foot deep in the river mud.
Yeah,
today I turned 100 dandelion crayons into a giant dandelion. And no, I'm not going to be melted.
Yeah, we love
This
guys.
is my dandelion crayon. The wall in my bedroom dedicated to my favorite childhood crayon, dandelion. Earlier this year, Crayola invited me to the Crayola Experience in Houston, Pennsylvania, where they let me rate their gift shop. So of course I took advantage of that and got 100 dandelion crayons. Thank you, Crayola. But we could of course melt these down to make one giant dandelion crayon, but the thing is I already have 2 functional wax dandelion crayons on my wall already. And we're trying to add new stuff here, you know? So instead, we're going to use these dandelion crayons to fill up a dandelion crayon bank. This isn't a dandelion crayon yet, we're going to paint it. But this is a vintage Crayola crayon bank, you can tell because of the style of the logo. But we're not going to be keeping money in it, we're going to be keeping crayons in it to display because I think it'll look good. So I started by sawing off some of the length from both of these stoppers on either side to give us a bit more room to fit the crayon. I also stacked up and glued some piece of matte board into the bottom piece, which is going to give us just the right amount of height where 2 sets of crayons will be able to stack inside perfectly. Now we're going to paint each of the ends to match an actual dandelion crayon, that lovely orangey yellow color. Almost forgot we got to sand them first.
Well played, well played.
Okay, I think you're ready to assemble. Got our first layer. The most that was able to fit each layer is 40. I know it kind of looks like maybe one more could fit, but I've tried. So we do have the problem where the second row of crayons, they kind of do want to fall between.
Wala, naglag like utaman.
So to fix that, I cut out this little circle of plastic that
Nabuang
I'm going to sit in
akong-
the middle with them. Now the second row will have a
Grabe yan, manilaga mo ni kayo.
Now I'm going to go ahead and finish filling this up and update you all with the final result.
Oh, nice.
And here is our
Eternity.
finished giant dandelion crayon. I'm gonna spin it there for you guys. It looks so cool. I love how it turned out. I love the little middle
Wala
piece
man.
there for some reason. I just really like how that looks. And
What
it took
the fudge?
83 dandelion crayons, so we didn't use the full 100. And for some reason, this top layer, it would hold 3 more than the bottom. I don't know why. Because these dandelion crayons had the vintage logo from the limited edition packs that they had, it now matches the vintage logo on the bank
Ouch.
itself, which is really cute. So here's where I decided to display it on the wall. I had to do a little bit of rearranging. I swapped it with that line and also moved some other things around, but I love this placement. It looks super cute with the rest of the wall. And the 100 dandelion crayons have already been added to the count in a previous video, so we don't have to worry about adding any. I do still have these 17 dandelion crayons left over that I do have a project in mind for, so stay tuned.
I called 911 on someone for leaving a baby in a hot car, and then watched my own sister get dragged out of the store in handcuffs. I was walking through the parking lot at the shopping center when I noticed a car with all the windows rolled up and a baby strapped into a car seat in the back. The temperature that day was pushing 100 degrees, which meant the inside of that car was probably closer to 150. The baby wasn't moving, and its face looked flushed, and I started banging on the window, but it didn't react at all. And I realized with absolute horror that I might already be too late. I yanked on every door handle, but they were all locked.
My bad, my
and I
bad.
turned around and screamed, "Somebody help me, there's a baby dying in here." I kept slamming my palm against the glass, yelling, "Wake up, come on, please wake up," while some guy sprinted to his truck saying he had a tire iron and a crowd started forming. I called 911 with shaking hands, telling the operator
Yay.
that there was an unresponsive baby
At
trapped
least
in
ikaw.
a car and I needed help right now. And I remember thinking that whoever left this child here deserved to rot in prison for the rest of their
Mo,
miserable
ikaw.
life. The guy came back with the tire iron and was about to swing at
Ikaw
the
ya-
window
ikaw
when
yata,
two
friend.
cop cars came
Ikaw,
screaming
friend.
into the lot and an officer jumped out yelling at everyone to step back and stay calm. But I wasn't calm because there was a dying baby 3 feet away from me and nobody was moving fast enough. The officers tried calling for the owner over the loudspeaker while another one got on the radio requesting emergency medical and a tool
Ah,
to open the
nalasik
door, and I
kita.
kept pounding on the glass, shouting at the baby to hold on. A fire truck arrived, and paramedics jumped out with a stretcher and cooling blankets, and one of them took one look at the baby through the window and said, "This child is already in critical condition," and I felt like I was going to throw up. Someone in the crowd spotted the owner walking out of the store carrying shopping bags like she didn't have a care in the world, and that's when my entire body went cold because the woman walking toward us was my sister. The cops grabbed her immediately and started shouting questions, and she looked completely bewildered, saying, "What are you talking about? What's happening right now?" But they weren't listening because they had a baby dying in a hot car. They threw her against the hood of her own car and handcuffed her while a firefighter grabbed an axe from the truck because they were out of time. The window exploded inward and glass went everywhere, and the paramedic reached through to unbuckle the car seat while everyone held their breath. They pulled the infant out and laid it on the stretcher and immediately started chest compressions. The paramedic was counting compressions out loud,
Porco
and she
friend.
kept going and going, but there was no response from the infant, and I could hear people in the crowd starting to cry because we all knew what it meant when CPR went on this long. She finally stopped and sat back on her heels, and everyone went completely silent because we thought we had just watched a baby die in a parking lot. A woman behind me let out a sob, and I felt my knees
Uy,
start to buckle. But then the
asam ka
paramedic
pa
looked
dong?
at her partner and said, "Are you
Asam
kidding me
ka
right
pa
now?"
dong?
Her partner leaned
Asam
over
ka pa
closer
dong, soy
and
bulo ka
started
doon,
laughing,
chich.
and I mean really laughing, like he had just heard the funniest joke of his entire life. Someone yelled, "What is wrong with you people?" But the paramedics just kept laughing, while the rest of us stood there in horrified confusion. The paramedic picked up the infant and turned it around and held it up for everyone to see. And that's when I noticed the battery compartment built into its back and the seam running up its
Bulo
spine
ka
and the
doon,
tiny
chich,
tag that
kalete.
said medical training equipment in red letters. I watched 30 people realize at the exact same moment that they had just spent 15 minutes trying to rescue a rubber doll, but it was scary how real it looked. My sister shouted, "I tried to tell you guys that you decided to smash my window instead of listening to me for 5 seconds." The officer uncuffed her immediately, and she snatched the mannequin from the paramedic and held it up for the whole crowd to see. I teach CPR certification classes to nurses. Every single one of you should be embarrassed right now. The crowd scattered, and my sister spotted me, and her eyes locked onto mine. You're the one who started this whole circus, aren't you?" I tried to explain that I genuinely thought the baby was dying, but she held up one finger and cut me off. "I'm going to bring this up at every single family gathering for the rest of your natural life, and probably at your funeral too." She popped the trunk to put away her bags, and I glanced over and immediately froze because there was a full-sized adult male mannequin lying in there wearing a button-down shirt and sunglasses. I stared at it and then stared at her, and she just shrugged. "That's Hank. I used him for the carpool lane. Don't judge me."
Good morning, time for school. Black parent. GAU. Oh. GAU, comma, DMTV. Get your ass up.
Don't make me.
Nah,
Sorry.
can't miss something. Don't make that fucking word. Thank you. Black people, TI.
Bulo ka doon, chich.
Alright. White folks, don't do that. Black folks, DIA.
Don't do that.
Di ka buhi ag libayatan eh.
White people. Yes,
Nabiyaan si
I saw
libayatan.
Black people. IASN.
First, people thought bridge piers were simply built straight up from the bottom of the river, but in fact, builders first created a dry working area in the water. It sounds impossible, but the clever builders drove a circle of tightly packed wooden poles into the riverbed to form a temporary wall. Then they pumped the water out from inside, creating a dry space for construction. To make the wooden poles stable, they hammered them deep into the riverbed until they reached solid ground below. But there was still a problem. Water could leak through the gaps between the wooden poles. So they built a second wall outside the first one and filled the gap between the two walls with mud and mortar. Once the mortar dried and hardened, the water could no longer leak through. At this time, the outside water pushed inward with great force. Before before, the water inside balanced that pressure. But once the inside water was pumped out, the walls could suddenly collapse. So workers added large wooden supports to hold the walls in place. Then they pumped out the remaining water and cleaned away the mud inside. Next, they filled the foundation with crushed stones and mortar. After it hardened, they could build the bridge piers on top. Lime mortar was placed between the stone blocks, so the whole pier became one strong structure. After removing the temporary walls, workers waited for high tide and used boats to carry huge stone beams between the piers. As the water level slowly dropped, the stone beams settled perfectly into place. This method was called the floating transport beam method. Flat stone slabs were laid on top to form the bridge deck. Railings were built on both sides to stop people from falling. Then a covered corridor was added on top to protect travelers from wind and rain. And just like that, you invented the covered bridge. But having too many bridge piers blocked passing boats. So when building the second covered bridge, builders first created a large wooden framework across the river. On top of it, they carefully stacked stone bricks into a giant arch connecting both riverbanks. Every stone had to fit perfectly together. That way, once the wooden support framework was built, the arch could stand firmly on its own and hold up the heavy bridge above it. However, during floods and high tides, the bridge sides could block the flow of water, so extra openings were added to let water pass through. And so, you invented the single arch covered bridge, which made it much easier for boats to travel underneath. But on very wide rivers, building a single giant arch was extremely difficult. If the arch was too high, crossing the bridge became inconvenient. If it was too low, it could not support enough weight. So the clever builders combined the methods of the first two bridges, joining bridge piers together with arches. Although the spans looked smaller, the structure became incredibly strong. Since the piers and arches worked so well, the builders also made the bridge itself grand and magnificent. They also left two water openings in the bridge body, and shaped the front of the piers like pointed wedges, so the water could smoothly split and flow around them, reducing the force hitting the bridge. Finally, they carefully carved two mythical beasts to guard the bridge and calm the waters. And with that, you invented the Anshun covered bridge in Chengdu. Although it has been destroyed and rebuilt many times through history, its origins can be traced back to the Yuan dynasty. It was also one of the 4 Chinese bridges that left the deepest impression on Marco Polo. First, people thought...
We've got the main part of the restaurant here, and then some little booth areas over on this bit. Yeah. So we get a nice restaurant. Good restaurant. We'll put wooden flooring down, booth or something over here, and then that's the exit that goes out there to upstairs, and then kitchen over here. Almost like little booths. Oh look, isn't that cute? Oh, yeah. But I'm thinking like here, on there, on there.
Poor guy and the rich girl got married, but their sweet married life turned into a horror movie. Every morning the man nearly died at his wife's hands. After marriage, Emma was no longer a goddess. She spent all day at home doing nothing. The fridge had nothing but expired food and soju. Even the water bottles were filled with liquor. She drank all day and caused trouble whenever she got drunk. William was busy studying for the civil service exam and hadn't found a job yet. All the household expenses depended on his wife's family. One day Emma joked that he was unemployed and didn't need to give red envelopes to distant relatives. William's pride was hurt and he kept bringing it up. The couple resented each other. Both sets of parents couldn't stand each other either. The mother-in-law complained that Emma, as a rich girl, didn't know how to be frugal. She squeezed dish soap twice every time she washed dishes. Emma's father's family looked down on William for being poor. They always made him shower before coming to the dinner table. Even when the little nephew went to call William, something embarrassing happened. Finally, the two decided to get divorced. In the mediation room, they listed each other's faults, insisting on divorce. But the court told them the cooling-off period for divorce was 30 days. After they walked out of the courthouse, Emma angrily said they still had to wait 30 days. But William felt he'd already endured 3,000 days. These 30 days were nothing. A happy William set a reminder on his phone for 30 days later. On the drive home, Emma suddenly asked William seriously, had he been thinking about divorce since the day he took the bar exam? William didn't answer. She pressed him directly. William made an extremely disgusted expression. The two started arguing in the car again. The next second, Emma woke up in the hospital. Her sister's excited screaming even woke the unconscious William. After the doctor examined them, both were fine. Both sets of parents happily applauded. Then William's mother noticed something was wrong. It turned out both of them had lost their memory from the car accident. The doctor told both families there was no guarantee their memories would return, but it wouldn't affect their daily lives. Emma and William, lying in their hospital beds, when they learned they were originally husband and wife, had completely opposite reactions. Meanwhile, both sets of parents...
I'm not too past this. Just I'm sorry.
Oh, don't say that. I'm so inviting. Smell me. They're calling me. Eat me. Jill. You this thing. It's happened.
Sorry. Oh, can you sit down?
What's bottom screws?
Yeah, sure, I'll do it for you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Wait outside a sec till the boss is gone.
Nearly throw them away.
Thanks.
Nabugo sila pinakalit eh.
Where is she?
Oh.
Are you alright? Yeah, but we're walking if you wanted to walk with us.
Oh, well, what are you doing there?
Nothing, we're just talking.
Natay Ben Halu. Ben Halu.
Don't call me a mate. Your wife, this man is just talking. Don't want to talk. No talking. No talking. Oh, oh. You could be anyone, you just talk or something.
Bantay dra, padulong storm.
Hello! How are you doing? And myself and James, we used to pick blackberries here as young boys. And they're salted. Oh, the sea's
Dagan.
Oh, thanks very much. That's okay, mate. Wow. You have to wait for that moment between perfect and spoiled. And as the mist comes right there, laying its salt hair gently on the fruit. Perfect.
Ay, wait.
Salted blackberry. And you can't make them. They're a gift. They're a gift.
I'm gonna walk back. Just someone you could stay with for a while. My nan, the mega bus is a fiver. I think I'm just gonna head back to the guys for a bit.
Is that a good idea?
Wait, here. Where? Get yourself to your nan's, okay? Thanks.
You take care of yourself, yeah?
There's a seat there and an arm there. Don't fall in the seat. I'm not too plastic.
When you come up dry, you and the girl can have it back.
What about the equipment?
Oh, it costs more to haul it off than just leave it, so you can keep that too. Compliments the panel.
I'm here purchasing. I'll give you $2 per. I think the county office told me it was worth $3. It's my baby girl's land. Gotta get a profit from it.
Seeing as it's the baby girl's land, tell you what, let's make it 6.
I just need to smooth the way with my daughter first.
They found something and now they want it for their own self. You also know that thing?
Well.
Convinced my boy hasn't seen a sunrise from the right direction in like 4 years. So my friend Marco, this dude has not had a normal sleep schedule since maybe sophomore year of high school. And I genuinely don't think he knows what a morning looks like anymore. Like the rest of us grew up, got jobs, started setting alarms, and Marco just decided that was optional. He works freelance, does graphic design, and his entire life runs on what I call vampire standard time. His day starts at like 6 p.m., he eats breakfast at midnight, and he goes to bed around the time most people are waking up for work. I've literally texted him at 3 in the afternoon and gotten a reply like, hey, sorry, just woke up. 3 p.m., and we've all just accepted it. But there was this one night, probably 2 years ago now, that completely changed how I see this man's lifestyle. So it's a Friday, and a few of us are up at our friend's apartment. Nothing crazy, just hanging out, ordering food. And someone texts the group chat like, hey, let's meet at 8. And Marco immediately responds, oh, that's kind of early for me. Can we do 10? And we're all just looking at our phones like, bro, 8 p.m. is early for you? That's literally nighttime. The sun is gone. But that's Marco. So we push it to 9:30, and he shows up at 10:15 anyway, because of course he does. Walks in with a bag of chips and an iced coffee like he just rolled out of bed. So we're all at the apartment, music going, and around 1 a.m. people start fading. You know how it goes. Someone's yawning every 5 minutes. Another guy's half asleep on the couch, and I'm fighting to keep my eyes open because I had work in the morning. My eyelids felt like they had tiny dumbbells attached to them. But Marco, this man is just hitting his stride. He's making a full pot of coffee at 1:30 in the morning. Not a quick cup, a full 12-cup pot like he's hosting a brunch. He's reorganizing the snack table by category, pitching ideas for things we should do. Like, bro, the night is winding down, everyone is half conscious, what do you mean let's start a movie? He pulled up a 2.5-hour director's cut and said we could finish it by 4. And then he suggested we go for a drive at 2 a.m. A drive. To where, Marco? The moon. One by one, everyone crashes. It's 3 a.m. now. The apartment is dead quiet except for somebody snoring. And it's just me and Marco left awake. I'm barely hanging on, at like 12% battery as a human being. My neck keeps doing that thing where it drops and you jolt back awake and pretend you weren't just asleep. And this man is sitting cross-legged on the floor, tablet on his lap, sketching something for a client, completely calm, completely alert, humming to himself like it's 2 in the afternoon, the glow of his screen lighting up his face like some nocturnal artist in his natural habitat. I looked at him and was like, dude, how are you not even a little bit tired? And he just looked up at me with this completely serious face, not a hint of exhaustion, and said, bro, the night just started. I actually laughed out loud because he was dead serious. 3 a.m. was his mid-morning. That was his 10 o'clock coffee break. So I finally gave up and passed out on the couch, full surrender, face planted into a cushion and was gone. And when I woke up around 7:30, sunlight coming through the blinds, I sat up and the apartment was spotless, genuinely cleaned, dishes washed and drying on the rack, trash taken out, counters wiped, blankets folded in a neat stack on the armchair. The place looked better than when we got there, and Marco was still awake, sitting by the window in this beam of golden morning light with his headphones on, watching the sunrise with a bowl of cereal balanced on his knee like it was the most peaceful thing in the world. No bags under his eyes, no zombie face, just vibing. He noticed me staring, pulled one earbud out, and just said, morning, real casual, like he was the one who'd been up at a reasonable hour, and I was the one being weird. I just stood there, half asleep, hair going 6 directions, looking at this man who had been awake for probably 20 hours straight, fully functional, 0 complaints. And I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to question it anymore. Some people just run on a different operating system, and Marco's does not include a sleep fund.
What do you get when you mix green glass with purple glass? Today we're going to find out. I'm doing this because I need the perfect color for a sea monster. Why does I have to make a bag like this with a hand?
Nice ka, Papa J.
In order to use this color, you have to heat it up slowly, which is why we put it in the garage, stab it up, and drop it on this bubble in a move called an overlay, where we sort of spread the color over the bubble. The green looks black when it's hot, but I swear that color is the green cup. And I'm stuffing it full of the purple. This way they'll layer and mix together. I squish it flat, drill a hole, cut off the tip, and that's the green color when it's cool. So you know it's green, I'm not lying to you. The green is over the purple. I stretch out the handle and cut it. Now it's time to add the little suckers. I cut it and I stab it with the back of my Sophietta to make the perfect little suction cup shape. Stab it. Oh, this one's a little too hot. It's getting out of control. No worries. We cut it. We stab it. Turned out okay. Last one. Now the thing is totally covered with a little suction. It's a great tentacle. Now time for the hand. A blob of pure purple, the same color as the inside. Cut out the thumb, cut the fingers in half, cut them in half, and now what I do is I straighten out the fingers so it's not so mangled. I heat up each finger individually, I stretch it out until it gets to the right length, and I trim it. Heat, stretch, trim. Heat, stretch, trim until all the fingers are the right thickness and length. I'll adjust the hand, heat up the tip to tentacle, and stretch it. Now the tentacle is becoming fat at the base and skinny by the tip. I stretch it and I wrap it around the hand. Now one thing I would say I kind of messed up here is I wrapped it around the back of the hand. What I really want to do is wrap it around the front of the hand. So I'm kind of trying to push the hand to grab the tentacle, but it's just the position of it is just not right. I can get these two little fingers to be sort of like petting the tentacle, but it's sort of like a Shape of Water romance situation when I was actually originally going for more of a struggle. But anyway, I pull off the tip so that the tip of the tentacle is very nicely integrated. And I notice the pinky's pushed up, so I just push that pinky down, and then it's perfect. I bonk it off, torch it, and if you guessed green, what do you get when you guess green?
What should I wear? This works, right? Muy presidencial. You look unstoppable.
Code red.
To meet the candidates assemblies in 10 minutes. Yelena's ship is hitting the iceberg.
No! Where are your lifeboats?
Jessica, handle the hair. Orange Bay, this is who I am.
Here you go. Vote for Elena. It's been an hour. An hour? Not worth it. I want to pet a puppy.
Elena, what should we do? I'm already at top B speed here.
I had no idea.
Luckily, I had my mom. I'm second guessing everything. And the booth is failing, and I'm failing, and I just need you now. A house to live in and what coffin to be buried in? Or should I be cremated?
At this point, there's no doubt that the dating market in China has skyrocketed to, I don't know how many levels of difficult there is, but it's pretty high up there. So not only has the number of single men drastically increased, but the amount of people who are now actively leaving the dating scene is on the rise as well. And I kind of respect that, that you can't always just leave. That's always an option. Now, this has led to an interesting moment where we actually get to see the effects of voluntary and involuntary celibacy affecting the wider economy. God, what a sentence. Okay, for example, because less and less couples are getting married each year, we see a decline in the maternity industry, which checks out. And whilst the media tries not to explicitly make the following connections, we know that more and more people becoming single has got to be the reason, or at least a contributing factor, towards why the pet industry is now slowly rising to a major part of China's economy. And pretty much at this point, everybody knows that the dating scene has hit rock bottom. But when it comes to actually facing the issue together, the relevant stakeholders at hand, which is pretty much every single participant within the dating market, are not necessarily uniting their method of approach to tackle the topic of discussion. And this, of course, includes the percentage of the couples population who I know for a fact are dying to get a piece of this pie, which is actually none of my business, by the way. Y'all are scat, unless it's consensual. Regardless, the point of this rambling here is supposed to tell you that both dating market participants and wider Chinese society continue to hold the opinion that the problem should be addressed. But not everybody takes the same approach in how they participate within the dating market. As the old saying goes, all paths lead to Rome, but not everybody takes the same path. The second part is not the old saying, it's the first part, but like, traditionalists, for example, often made up by a slightly more mature audience base, believes the solution to fixing the dating market and the singleness epidemic is to repatch the arranged marriage method because it's one of the only services that exists, where you get full transparency on what you're supposedly getting into. But the downside towards this method of approach is that you get very little say on who your partner is actually going to be. Personally, I think that's a little counterintuitive because in the scenario where you rush into a relationship where you haven't spent enough time and effort to get to know each other to the full extent, there are of course other issues as well that can arise, for example, like having a lack of trust within the relationship because you didn't spend enough time building it in the first place. And I swear to God, this is an actual complaint I've seen before. It's the fact that the agency or the broker offers no customer support hotline for when the relationship doesn't work out post-purchase. Fair enough. I mean, if you're going to make it a service, at least make it comprehensive. Idealists, on the other hand, are made up by a slightly more innocent and younger generation, and believe the solution to fixing the problem is, of course, reviving authentic connections. This basically just means more people need to take the initiative in putting themselves in environments where it can happen naturally. Because honestly, it's actually pretty important to have the idea that fundamentally, love should happen when it's at the right moment, and romance should feel spontaneous and not forced. And whilst this is a great solution on paper, the method here adopts the assumption that everybody has great social skills and hobbies worth talking about, and has the mental and social capability of striking up an interesting conversation with a stranger in a public space. Now, here's an interesting and extremely niche report conducted by Seoul and the University of Shanghai. It was a collaborative approach that found the amount of people that are finding it easy to socialize with one another is slowly
Kagwang nakabogsa man ta.
each new generation, even when asked about how they feel doing it in their favorite hobby circles. Now take what you will out of that information, but you got to remember one thing. All they did was just ask 3,000 people of their
Asa
current
man ang
user base,
like
so
antro ko
maybe
na
take it
solo
with a
man.
grain of salt. Now somewhere between the middle, we have more and more people adopting the realist build. Believe that love is possible only through dedication and hard work towards self-improvement. Now they don't make the mistake in idealizing romance, because love is part emotions and part logistics, and as long as you put in the work, you will get your reward proportionally in return to what you have to offer. In theory. In fact, I dare say some people watching right now would agree to this idea and would hold their ground and stand firm in subscribing to this idea. Well, that's until you hear about this story. Meet Yi Hua, a 25-year-old top 50 global university graduate with a stable job and income and ownership of property and car in the city of China. Now, he was surprisingly having a little bit of difficulty finding a suitable partner despite being on already 10 to 20 dates. And the counter-argument to cases like these, which naturally presents itself in the eyes of the realists, is that there's always a magic number to your problem. Because the nature of statistics tells us, supposedly, that the easiest way to increase the likelihood of something happening is to rinse and repeat within your realms of possibilities until it happens. But my carefully curated counter-argument to that is, of course, Li Hua's story happened 11 years ago. He's still single. Now, I actually wasn't going to include the full story, but upon reading his full experience, I'm not joking when I say this is possibly the biggest elf I've ever seen in my 25 years of life. Okay, so Lee actually went on his very first blind date back in 2014, arranged by his family through a matchmaking service. Now, this is how he documents the interaction, okay? He still remembers that first girl clearly. In his words, she was stunning, like influencer-level beauty, and that's without filters, just naturally gorgeous. Now, the girl was actually a student counselor at the University of China, which is where this man works. And apparently, she thought Mr. Lee was decent as well. But here's the twist. Lee chose not to pursue her. And when prompted to question why, in his own words, he claimed that she was just too good. I felt like I didn't deserve her. Not only was she beautiful, but she was mature, ambitious, extremely capable in social settings, the full package. And this is the line that sent me, okay? Being with her felt like I was a level 1 player going up against a max level boss. It just wasn't fair. Mr. Lee said meeting someone like that made him feel like she was out of reach, way out of his league. Now, since that day onwards, Lee stopped being skeptical of matchmaking. He thought to himself, if that's the kind of person I can meet, maybe it's worth trying. Lee then went on to complete 123 more matches, spending an estimated range of 50,000 to 100,000 yuan throughout the process, with no success. Now, I want to be honest with you. If this was my dating career, the only way you can possibly find this out is if I physically died and someone left it in my will. This might just be the biggest fumble in history. Then, of course, we have the materialists, who don't exactly fall into the spectrum in a traditional sense, because like the idealists who also chase a concept of romance, or a version of love that perfectly aligns with their desired lifestyle, many materialists would argue that they're just being honest about the harsh modern realities, especially in a dating economy where the cost of being in a relationship has just never been higher. And of course, when you then follow up with the question, bro, what does that all mean? Most of them would just tell you they want someone who's hot, rich, and loyal. But in reality, of course, when it comes to seeing die-hard materialists in action, they usually just reduce their cutthroat criteria of hot, rich, and loyal down to a more realistic criteria, 2 out of the 3. That's all you get. And you know, my advice here is that if you do come across these type of people in your social network, instead of contemplating whether or not they're a good demographic of people to involve yourself romantically with, you can always just become their good friend instead, because whilst they don't always have the most romantic relationship, they always have the best stories to tell. I love you guys. But personally, I think it's kind of unfair to hold an entire single population, whether fragmented or not, collectively hostage, and then demand a magic solution from them. Because most of what's killing the dating market today are things that no one group of people or demographic can actually fix or reasonably control. Because whilst things like gender imbalance, rising cost of living, looks inflation, consumer dating culture, dating fatigue, and overall distrust towards the opposite gender, decline in social skills amongst men in the Zoomer population can all be attributed factors towards why people are becoming single. We all know that the real reason is simply because the best dating show in history hasn't dropped a decent season in years. So I think in order to understand the current state of the dating market, we'll need to first begin simplifying the problem. And to achieve that, you can kind of think of the willingness to escape single life as a spectrum that you can stand on. For example, people who care about being single, and people who don't. With people who care about being single likely spending the most amount of time and effort to escape their current situation, whereas people who don't spend relatively much less effort and urgency to escape. For example, if Xiaoming, sitting at one end of the spectrum, cares a lot about being single, then he may potentially be willing to spend up to 300,000 yuan a year just to sign up to a VIP diamond tier matchmaking service in hopes that he'll be introduced to the perfect woman. He knows that statistically speaking, the chances of finding a good and successful match in the short run is very low, but he does it anyways because he fears nothing. Then Xiaohong, sitting on the other end of the spectrum, who is generally unbothered or nonchalant about being single, would more likely find the idea of meeting someone naturally by spending most of her time in social or hobby circles she enjoys to be the right play. But we all know the real intellectual powerhouse here is actually Xiao Wang, who would just have his mom cross-post his stats in the City Square marriage market and all relevant social platforms and wait for the results to come to themselves. And of course, when we're on the topic of dating and marriage and parental influence, the same research that we talked about earlier, the one with University of Shanghai, suggests that parental pressure is still one of the biggest influencing factors when it comes to shaping children's views on dating and marriage. Now, this is actually a good statistic to have because now parental pressure as a key driving point in the phenomenon we see in dates. For example, people who care about being single with parental pressure is more likely to participate in matchmaking and other fast-track dating methods because they have a much greater sense of urgency to escape single life and meet obligations. People who don't care about being single but have parental pressure on their backs could potentially either turn to dating apps or attempt to find meaningful personal connections through more organic routes like hobbies, friendship groups, or established communities in order to find the right partner. But it does run the risks of having no urgency, which can lead to the individual spending the majority of their youth in semi-serious situationships that doesn't lead to fruitful outcomes in the long run. Now, people who don't care about being single with no parental pressure, how does it feel? But of course, at the end of the day, another great soft skill to have that translate into dating success is of course the ability to communicate your emotions clearly and concisely to the other party. So say what you mean. You will do everyone a favor. And even though 62% of Chinese Gen Z respondents believe the concept of marriage is frightening, I think a tip that you can always remember to help you feel a little better is that how can you be scared of the concept of marriage when the issue of the singleness epidemic is not solved in the first place? Just so you know, if I'm found incapacitated in the streets after the release of this video, I probably deserve it. Of course, up to this point, there are people left that I haven't really covered, and these are what I like to call outliers of the dating market. Because whilst the singleness epidemic is a standard issue across dating market participants, it doesn't necessarily affect everybody to the same degree. Some people are drowning in love, while others are drowning in loneliness. I mean, you're both technically drowning, but only one of them actually wants to die. So from the male side of the outlier spectrum, we have people who can successfully pull off the Jackson Wang haircut. In fact, the whole spectrum might as well just be called how much do you look like Jackson Wang on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is single because he's literally Jackson Wang, and dating will only negatively affect his generational run. On the female side of the spectrum, and perhaps the true apex predators of the whole dating market, who's never really suffered from the singleness epidemic, is the tier 1 city rich single auntie with no kids. And whilst the individual's initial reaction to entering this kind of relationship may be to question whether or not it's actually real love, the feeling will quickly fade away after a few sips of your $15 milk tea riding shotgun in her bedroom. Now, despite being on top of the food chain, there are still issues that plague the Ivy League equivalent of daters within the Chinese dating market. And that is the concept of expectation to reality. And this essentially just refers to how many people
Mamalagi
that
pa.
actually exist in the population that satisfies your criteria. For example, if you're satisfied with somebody with an ordinary job, not too ugly, and has the ability to support a family, that's approximately 80% of the population. If you're looking for an attractive and well-established individual with a high-paying private sector job and a well-established social circle, the figure then sits at roughly 10%. If you're looking for a bilingual, well-groomed man with wealth, power, and status so untouchable even celebrities cannot hold a candle to him, please feel free to submit your application to the State Council. Thank you for listening, and goodbye. Have you seen this look before? You know what, if you have, you might actually be the first in your bloodline to ever lay your eyes upon this. It is viral for many reasons, one of which is that it's very easy to draw, but the other reason is because it's now the standard issue influencer face. To be more precise, it is actually something that netizens have dubbed as the influencer beauty standard. Well, me. Although whatever you wish to call it, one thing is that you can't go anywhere without seeing the aesthetic if you are chronically online. Hey, you think it's pretty difficult for an entire country to agree on anything as a collective.
Bantay,
to
friend.
this day, the north and south of China still can't settle the question on whether or not a bowl of gluttonous rice should be served sweet or savory. The answer is of course savory. But if there's one thing that the people have been united on, now that this has ran its course, it'll be how the influencer beauty standard has truly evolved to set back the people. If you had asked someone in China 10 years ago, for example, on what an influencer face looked like, the answer would be the big eyes, small face, pale skin, high cheekbone, narrow chin look that officially took over the mainstream beauty standards since the early 2000s. Rinse and repeat until it gets the fan being an Angela Baby in 2010, where they became the peak representation of this classic influencer face. The version 1.0. Beauty salons and plastic surgeons for the majority of the 21st century were rated based on how close they can get you to look like this 1.0 version, because as per Exhibit A, when the South Korean model spent almost $700,000 to look like Angela Baby, with the rise of short-form media, if you had a classic influencer face, it was a license to print. Although, in my opinion, the funniest thing to come out of this whole thing out of the past decade has been the eye-opening experience and realization of just how much people are willing to spend to look like this more-accurate version of this viral snake demon from the certified classic Hulu Brothers released in 1986, which I think does the perfect job in capturing the unrealistic beauty standards the look has spawned. I mean, that's literally how it looks. But now that it's been a wild couple of years, there's been good news and there's been bad news. The good news is that this look is slowly dying, giving the new generation an opportunity to come in to revolutionize the influencer face with something, I guess, a bit more achievable by human standards. The bad news, however, is that we somehow managed to replace it with something even less achievable. Hey, hear me out! Hear me out! What are you going to say, King? What about something that looks like a 3-year-old adult? Hey, no. It's the mid to late 2010s, a niche rural aesthetic begins to catch the internet by storm on a short video platform called Kuaishou, in which netizens later coined the aesthetic the Manjiao makeup. If you notice a few similarities between what you see with Manjiao culture then versus what we see trending today on the front pages of China's latest Beauty For You page, then you're not really mistaken in thinking that the similarities overlap. I thought it was actually just a matter of time before this trend went into the big leagues, really, which might sound like I'm joking when I say that. Like, why? Is it because this is one of those trends that looks so ridiculous, so absurd, it's bound to attract attention? What do you call this? Virally optimized beauty trend? It's like one of those mewing faces. It's so uncanny, it's literally impossible to scroll past without slowing down to take a closer gander at the structural integrity that's going on over here. But no, because what I'm sharing with the class in this show and tell is that this wasn't intended to be ironic at all. Because around the same time, a viral Kuaishou beauty filter was also doing numbers across the nation. It was actually the 3D equivalent of the manhua face that was gaining a lot of traction around the same time period as well. And what the rural population ended up discovering was that if you were to just accentuate certain features, especially around the ADSL area, and, maybe add a more triangular lip that mimics the pout of a child, then that will work in conjunction with this filter, and you can kind of get pretty close to looking like a real-life webtoon character. That shit had people fiending. So right from the beginning, unlike the classic influencer face, which was designed to make you look more sculpted, which really I think works best if you have been surgically enhanced, the Manjiao makeup was more of an optimization.
Well played, friend.
Tools to have an easier time hiding the fact that you're chopped. Respectfully. Which actually worked best from one specific angle, preferably in non-dynamic motion. That's a fancy way to say when your ass ain't moving too much, which is perfect for TikToks and short-form content. It's perfect for influencers. Yeah, see where this is going? But that's also the reason why the makeup can look so low quality if you were to, I don't know, go outside wearing the earliest versions of it, because you are literally walking around wearing the makeup equivalent of a rough draft. Your face is quite literally powered by a preliminary vision. So, as the Mandel makeup gains more traction, it becomes a pretty staple and iconic influencer aesthetic on a platform Kuaishou, which means the next step of the operation was to just let it run its course, make it out of the Kuaishou app into the big leagues, which naturally happens if more mainstream or professional influencers just picked up on the trend, which they did. They saw that and was like, let's make this a little more palatable to the average person. So updates were made to the look so that the features weren't so exaggerated, so it can get more mainstream, so that people can like it unironically. And the aesthetic does exactly that, but unfortunately, even though it was updated, the influencer face's reputation actually went further downhill as it got more and more popular. The look was collectively dubbed as Dijishunmei, which translates to low-tier aesthetics. Hey, you know what else is low tier? Going traveling without an eSIM, silly. Waiting in line to buy a SIM card when you land. Even if you don't get scammed, the risk in itself is just crazy. Wouldn't have to do that with a trusted provider like Saley, our sponsor of the day. And the convenience comes from the fact that you can just download the app, set up the eSIM, and have secure internet connection right away when you land. With Saley, the eSIM just needs installed once, and you can then choose between the different sizes of affordable data plans, including unlimited data in over 200 destinations. But the most convenient thing for me, actually, is that Saley not only has an inbuilt ad blocker that can reduce data usage by up to 28.6%, but they'll also notify you when you've used up to 80% of your data, which is very convenient for the times when Wi-Fi is bad and you still want to watch something. That's a very common scenario. All Saley's eSIM data plans are compatible for iOS or Android devices, but just in case, right? Saley will provide you a full refund if your device isn't eSIM compatible. It's also pretty handy to know that the chat support is available 24/7 in case anything needs resolving. So, if you're tired of looking around for a trustworthy eSIM provider, just download the Saley app. With my code at checkout, that's 15% discount on Saley data plans. Now, they called it that not because the predominant early adopters were from a lower tier of socioeconomic class, since Kuaishou was, developed for rural areas to hop on social media. It was called low-tier aesthetic, the same way being dripped out head to toe in Gucci or Louis Vuitton, or, wrapping your hurricane in pure gold is considered tacky, because the aesthetic seems like it's such a loud way to convey that young and 2D proportions equals attractive. Matter of fact, here's a very interesting piece of story that paints you a picture of just how much that stigma can really set you back. Rosie Zhao, a very top-tier A-lister, was under fire in 2024 for exactly this, as she went through an appearance rebrand, in which, despite still being very physically attractive, these questionable quote-unquote improvements that was made on her face made a lot of people feel that she now looked more like an influencer rather than a celebrity, because her face just looks like a copy and paste straight out of Red Nose, which, in the unspoken hierarchy of pop culture, I'm pretty sure going from a celebrity to an influencer is the entertainment equivalent of downsizing from a penthouse to a studio apartment. This was of course made into a bigger deal because for most of her rise to fame she had actually maintained a softer and more natural aesthetic. But with this shift towards a sharper and more standardized influencer face, critics argued it was either her or her stylist that has fallen victim to this evolution of modern beauty standards. Although I'd say what happened to Jolus only reflects the tip of the iceberg when it comes to trying to satisfy these unrealistic standards, because she's at the top. So here's a piece of information that could be more relevant to the everyday person, like the story of Wang Jing, who was under fire in 2024 for managing to convince over 500 of her followers to get the same cosmetic surgery procedure as her, within a clinic that she owned, if I may add, after she revealed that she spent more than $140,000 on operations to achieve the quote-unquote ideal baby face that made her look 10 years younger. Wang Jing was, matter of fact, dubbed as the latest plastic surgery template, as roughly 517 people followed the exact same routine to look exactly like Wang Jing's replica. Of course, if you want to have a look, it'll include a full high-crowned head, prominent elf ears, round Barbie-like eyes, large eye-catching under-eye bags, a Korean-style upturned nose, and a cute smile. And it isn't even a joke that Wang is trying to establish
nakaon na to ang ulti ni Jag ug ang ulti ni Kuan.
Wang Jing clone kingdom. Although, unfortunately, I think if you want to be a part of that kingdom, the tickets
Sakita sa ulti ni Kuan.
cost around
Snapfire.
50,000 RMB at a minimum. because at Wang's clinic, the price for 3 hyaluronic acid injections to the face is said to have costed around 38,888 yuan, which is roughly $5,500. If you take injections regularly, you know that's almost 2 times the market price of a standard licensed clinic. Although the tragedy of this story was that the money in this case does not buy you safety, because as Wang Jing began to amass more citizens in her kingdom, the queen was inevitably photographed in the streets, which showcased the reality of what actually happens after you use a super large amount of injection fillings to achieve her so-called baby face look, which was around 66 injections that were tallied up according to the procedures Wang Jing herself has told us she did. The irony, of course, is that once again, whilst the face looks absolutely diabolical in real life, it does look absolutely phenomenal under filters, doesn't it? Which means the face has not forgotten its Nigel roots. Of course, stories like Wang Jing doesn't fall too far from the problem if you just take a look at things from the macroeconomic perspective. Yes, big data. For example, in 2025, a report published by the consultants at KPMG gives us a very morale-evaporating piece of data, showing that firstly, in cases like Wang's, RedNote is the culprit, where around 72% of users consider RedNote content reliable, which is a key factor in driving consumer preferences with non-invasive aesthetic procedures such as Botox or hyaluronic acid fillers. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, if RedNote has such a drastic influence over people's opinions in the beauty market, then isn't it a bit dangerous to have an app with this much control over a demographic that puts more trust in the app's algorithm than I have over my local grocery store flower section during Valentine's Day? Because once in a while, you'll forget. And guess who has you covered? Everybody's done this, right? I think. Anyways, it is dangerous. That's precisely why Xiaohongshu has been pulled up over 20 times for issues relating to publishing false advertisements and failing to review content information. In fact, if we count the most recent times violations have occurred in May 2025, which marks the 4th time the app was sent to the principal's office for an actual without issues such as product recommendations backfiring. So similar to Wang's case, where the algorithm presents you something that does not have your best interest in mind when it helps you make permanent and life-altering decisions, just know that Xiaohongshu is kind of infamous for exactly that. That is, by the way, literally the equivalent of you going to a flea market as a tourist with the mindset of, I trust everybody here with my money. No, I think you're going to get rinsed. Because on one hand, as we just mentioned, influencers on RedNote is a crowd favorite when it comes to beauty advice, but on the other hand, let's refer to KPMG once again, since 90% of the content on the platform is user-generated, this means you never know who you're really getting your information from. Which, unlike me, who only spreads misinformation occasionally when it comes to gossip, in which the consequences is mild brigading from a fan base of a Chinese idol. If you take the wrong advice on cosmetic injectables, the consequences, I believe, are a little bit more dire. This is of course a slight concern when you realize Capers also details the widespread use of smuggled fillers and anesthetics in unlicensed salons, which is a whopping 88% of the industry. These illegal injections were often sourced through platforms like RedNote in order to bypass regulatory oversight. Hey, Xiaohongshu, more like the beauty black market at this point, alright? In fact, to give you a precise rundown on how prevalent this issue actually is, Beijing recently went through a crackdown on the rise of illegal cosmetic clinics that popped up all over the place to meet the increasing demand for cheap and easy access fillers. Now, we can go through all the stories one by one, but that will be, I don't know, a few hours of case study. So why don't I just show you the behind the scenes of how these are actually ran. Firstly, due to the difficulties in actually obtaining a medical practitioner qualification certificate, many doctors in these unlicensed clinics would usually practice without medical degrees or sometimes just without any medical background at all, which raises the concern, well, how do they practice then if there's no medical background? Well, lucky for you, if you're looking for a new job opportunity, these clinics would offer plastic surgery crash courses in order to help the staff get up to speed so they can perform surgeries as soon as possible. In this leak, for example, where an insider was asking about the requirements for registration, the clinic was seen responding telling you the crash courses were relatively easy to learn and there are students ranging from their 50s to their teens. Yes, the trustworthy teenage surgeons, where the surgery training courses last for 6 days and the tuition fee is 11,800 RMB, which is around $1,700 US, where throughout the grueling 6-day crash course, you will be an expert on double eyelid surgery, rhinoplasty, liposuction, dimpling, under-eye reduction, eyelid